Oji Rose, and today we're going to be talking about a short piece called In the Long Run, Everything Might Be Automated, assuming we don't destroy ourselves first because we think everything is going to be automated. This is going to talk about Keynes. We're going to be talking about Keynes here. And he had this idea that one of the problems was that if you raised interest rates during, say, an economic downturn, that this would send a signal to the market that the future would be weak, that the economy was going to weaken. And as a result, people wouldn't work as hard now. They wouldn't invest as much as they could. And so consequently, the very act of raising interest rates in order to save the economy would be the act that would destroy the economy because it would change how people behaved now because of the signals that were sent by the interest rates. You know, Keynes was very concerned about classical economic thinking that had this idea that if we're going through a depression, it's better just to suffer it because in the long run we'll be better off. There will be a change of hands of who owns the assets and so on and so forth. But Keynes was concerned that we didn't appreciate the possibility of falling below what I'm going to call a demand event horizon. And there's a whole paper on Keynes that gets into details on this. And that's the idea that if demand in the economy dries up because there's not enough liquidity in the system or not enough investment, well, it's almost like you cross the event horizon of a black hole. It pulls you in, and the market doesn't self-correct, or at least it does not self-correct for a very, very long time. And so Keynes was very concerned about us not doing something today in the name of tomorrow, and the actions that we did today, say not getting into debt, would actually ironically be why the brighter future never came. He's actually, funny enough, I actually view Keynes's thinking as very Hegelian, tied to Hegel's absolute knowing, and what could Dr. Lass and I talk about as the absolute. And for Hegel, the absolute is the prince is kind of this kind of truth that, as you know, it also includes the truth of the subject. Well, that then gets incorporated to the truth, which is a result of your experience of the truth. So that changes, but that then also changes the subject experiencing the truth, and on and on and on, and they kind of feed one another. So likewise, for Keynes, our understanding of the future in the present changes how we act in the present, which therefore changes the future that we might experience. So it's not this simple thing where you can say, well, suffer today so that we have a better tomorrow, because the very suffering that we do today could send signals about what's going to happen tomorrow that could therefore result in that brighter future never coming. And I want to tie this idea up to automation, where we're talking a lot, and particularly I'll focus on truck drivers because there's a lot of talk about self-driving cars, but the argument that I'm making here would apply just as well to any work of any automation, any work that's going to be automated in the future. And again, we're very concerned about the signals that interest rates send to the market, but we're not really concerned about the signals, say, talking about automation sends to the market. If everyone's talking about self-driving cars, why in the world would you become a truck driver? Why in the world would you why would you go to work if you're just going to lose your job? The notion of having a career or starting a career seems impossible if eventually automation is going to take over. But you see, this poses a problem. If we in fact need truckers now to keep the economy going, but people don't become truckers because they know about the automation coming in the future, then you could cause an economic collapse or decline now of what keeps the automation from happening because the economy weakens so much. So you have this idea that self-driving cars are coming. That could lead to a collapse of the economy now, which could delay the coming of self-driving cars. You see kind of the irony there. You know, for me, as I understand it, I'm not an expert in the technology, but it doesn't seem like self-driving cars are going to be here for another decade or so, and that they're going to take it, maybe not. But if that's the case, we need truckers now. The supply chain issue that is going on over in California, across the country, is just absolutely staggering. There's a wonderful article, by the way, by a man named Ryan Johnson. I'm a 20-year truck driver. I will tell you why America's shipping crisis will not end. I suggest it to everyone. It's in the article. It's very, very good. But mainly the idea, and I'm not claiming that coming automation, and therefore truck drivers not wanting to be workers is the sole reason for what's going on in the supply chain. But it certainly is a factor, I would dare to say. And I want to suggest that we really do have a major problem with automation, because if we know automation is coming, well, then it's irrational to get the jobs that are going to be automated today. But that means nobody's doing those jobs that we need people to do now, and that could cause an economic problem, maybe even a crisis. And ironically, that crisis could delay the coming automation. But how in the world are you going to get people to work? Am I suggesting that we need to suppress the information that automation is coming? Am I saying that we need to kind of delude people on the truth? No, what I'm saying is that since we have the internet and we therefore cannot control all of the signals the internet sends to the market. In Keynes' day, you mostly had to worry about interest rates, but now you have the whole internet. What I'm saying is we need to start thinking about ways to incentivize people to go into jobs that they know are going to be automated so that they keep doing those jobs today so that we actually get to the age when jobs can be automated. Is it going to be a better world if jobs are automated? Well, if we maintain productivity, it could be. It could be, but it depends on how we get there. So basically, I want to argue that we need to start thinking about say, for example, how truck drivers who have been working for a decade will receive stock and ownership rights in coming automation. Where, say, if you've worked for 10 years, you will get X% of ownership rights in the production and profits that the automation, that self-driving cars, self-driving trucks will bring about. And that if you work for 2 decades or longer, you could set it up by year. That will affect how much, what right you have to the productivity. And I think we need to seriously consider that because one of the things that keeps people working is the idea of a better tomorrow, right? And a better tomorrow is defined not merely in terms of more money, but more wealth, which is overall quality of life. I think the well-being of an economy is strongly tied to its wealth creation. And the biggest source of wealth creation, I think, is human capital. And there are a lot of economists who talk about that, McCloskey, Sowell, and others. Well, if robots are going to be a kind of robot capital, they're not merely tools, and they're going to be a robot capital. They're going to replace human capital, and that means they are going to be a form of wealth. And so if we want to keep people working today, there has to be some sort of promise that they will get to be part of that wealth and participate in that wealth. Because if not, then they're just not going to keep working because they don't have a future. And they're especially not when they are also receiving news from the internet that they shouldn't work, or that bosses are taking advantage of them, or that wages are collapsing, all this other information. So I think we need to be creative. I think if indeed people knew that they were going to get ownership rights or a percentage of the profits from coming automation, if they work in those jobs up to the point where they're automated and as it transitions, then people would actually search for jobs that will be automated. They'll want jobs that will be automated because they could receive an extraordinary retirement benefit. It would be part of your stock portfolio going into the future. Now, again, I'm open to any ideas that people may have on this topic, but I certainly think we need to figure out some way to deal with this radical problem of automation having a Keynesian effect where we have an economic crisis today because people think automation is coming. It's a sort of Keynesian idea that I think we need to take seriously, because if we don't, we may suffer for it. And ironically, our very certainty of the coming future of automation may be precisely why that future doesn't come. And to me, ownership rights in that automation, percentages of the profits would be a way to do it. And I would argue, you say, well, the owners of the companies won't want to do that. Well, the owners of those companies are going to go out of business today if they don't do something like that, and they're not going to make any profits off automation if they don't do what I'm describing. So there will be incentive for those companies to do it. They can't make all the profits off automation they think they're going to make if there's an economic crisis today or certainly they're not going to make those profits as soon as they could, because that coming age will be delayed so greatly by the economic downturn we may go into as a result of our overconfidence that automation is coming. So anyway, this is just a short work exploring this dilemma. For more by O.G. Rose, please visit ogrose.com, and thank you for your time.